"You are useless," she screamed. "Completely useless." Ugochi stood still, her body stiff. Elizabeth paced, breathing hard, like she was looking for something to throw. "I am tired of you," Elizabeth continued. "Every time it's one problem or the other. First you embarrass me in front of my guests, now you are destroying my things." "Ma, please," Ugochi said softly. "I didn't mean..." "Shut up." Elizabeth's house sat on a quiet street, behind a tall gate and a wall topped with sharp metal. From outside, it looked like peace and success. The paint was fresh, the flowers were trimmed, the cars in the compound shined like they were washed every day. But inside, the house felt cold. Not because of air conditioner alone, though the air was always too cool. It was cold because of the way people spoke, the way people looked at each other, and the way silence sat in corners like a watcher. Ugochi woke up before the sun. Her phone alarm rang at 4:45 a.m. She opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling of her small room. The room was at the back of the house, near the kitchen. It was not big enough for more than a small bed, a plastic chair, and a wooden box where she kept her few things. She sat up and rubbed her eyes. "Today again," she whispered to herself. She knelt beside her bed, not to show anyone, not to impress anyone, but because it helped her mind settle. "God, give me strength," she said quietly. "Help me do right, even when it's hard." Then she stood up, washed her face in a small basin, and tied her wrapper well so it would not loosen while walking. She wore a plain top and slippers. Her hair was covered with a scarf. Before 5:30 a.m., she was already in the kitchen. The kitchen was modern and wide, with shining tiles and a big fridge. But Ugochi did not feel joy there. She felt duty. She moved fast and silent, like someone trying not to make a mistake. She set water to boil, she cleaned the countertop, she checked the pantry, she brought out bread, tea, eggs, and fruit. Elizabeth liked everything arranged in a certain way, and she noticed small things. If the bread was sliced too thick, she would complain. If the tea was not hot enough, she would complain. If the spoon was not placed straight, she would complain. Ugochi had learned the rules of the house like someone learning a hard language. There was no room for "sorry, ma." Sorry did not soften Elizabeth. At 6:15 a.m., Ugochi heard footsteps. Elizabeth came into the kitchen in a silk robe, her face already tight, like she had been angry all night. Her hair was wrapped in a towel. She looked at the kitchen like an inspector. Ugochi greeted her. "Good morning, ma." Elizabeth did not answer. She walked to the table and looked at what was set. Then she picked up the cup and sniffed the tea. "This is weak," she said. Ugochi quickly moved closer. "Sorry, ma, Elizabeth raised her hand, stopping her. "Don't start with your long story. Just do it properly." Ugochi nodded. "Yes, ma." She took the cup back, poured the tea away, and made another one. Her hands shook a little, but she tried to control it. Elizabeth sat and began to scroll on her phone. The screen light reflected on her face. Her long nails tapped the table. "Where's my vitamin?" Elizabeth asked, without looking up. "In your drawer, ma. I will bring it now." Ugochi ran upstairs. She knew which drawer. She brought it down with water, placing it gently beside Elizabeth's plate. Elizabeth took it and swallowed it like she was doing it out of anger. Then she looked at Ugochi for the first time. "You," she said. "Yes, ma. Don't forget we have visitors today. My friends are coming by noon. The house must be perfect." "Yes, ma. And wear something neat," Elizabeth added, eyes narrowing. "Not like you are coming from a village meeting." Ugochi kept her face calm. "Yes, ma." Elizabeth stood up and walked out, leaving her plate half eaten. Ugochi cleared the table and washed the dishes. After that, she swept and mopped the sitting room. She dusted every surface, including the corners nobody looked at. She cleaned the glass tables until they shined. She went upstairs and changed the bed sheets. She cleaned the bathrooms. She washed clothes and hung them outside in the back. The work did not end. There was no time to sit. When she paused to stretch her back, she felt a sharp pain in her waist. She placed her hand on her lower back and breathed in. Her mind went to her daughter, Adani. Adani was only 8. She had been living with Ugochi in the small room behind the kitchen for 3 months now. Before that, she stayed with an aunt in the village, but the aunt had too many children and no money. When Ugochi begged Elizabeth to allow the child stay with her, Elizabeth agreed, but not because she cared. She agreed because it made Ugochi work harder. Fine, Elizabeth had said that day, but don't let her disturb my house. If she starts noise, she will go back. So Adani stayed quiet. Too quiet sometimes. She watched things with wide eyes. She learned when to speak and when to keep silent. She knew which parts of the house she must not enter. She knew she must greet Elizabeth from far and quickly move away. But at night, in their small room, Adani became a child again. That thought gave Ugochi small strength. Around 10:30 a.m., Elizabeth called from upstairs. Ugochi? Yes, ma, Ugochi answered quickly, wiping her hands. Elizabeth came down, now dressed in a fitted dress and heels. Her hair was done. Her face was full of makeup, neat and perfect. She looked like someone going to an event. She carried a small bag and keys. I'm going out to pick something. I will be back before they arrive. Yes, ma.
Elizabeth walked toward the door, then turned back. Do not let your child come to the front when my friends are here. Ugochi swallowed. Yes, ma. And if you embarrass me today, you will regret it, Elizabeth added in a low voice, then walked out. The gate closed behind her. Ugochi stood still for a moment, her heart beating fast. Then she moved again. She went back to work, cleaning the last corners, arranging cushions, making the guest bathroom smell fresh, and setting cups neatly in the sitting room. By 11:45 a.m., the house was quiet and bright. It smelled like soap and perfume. Ugochi changed her clothes, wearing a simple black gown that was clean and decent. She tied her hair again and stood in front of a small mirror in her room. Adani sat on the bed with her legs folded, holding a small notebook. Mommy, Adani said softly, are they coming today? Ugochi nodded. Yes, they will come. Adani looked down. Will Madame shout today? Ugochi walked closer and sat beside her daughter. She wanted to lie and say no, but she could not. I don't know, Ugochi said gently. But whatever happens, you must not be afraid. Adani's eyes lifted. But I'm afraid. Ugochi pulled her close. I know, my child. It's okay to feel afraid, but we will not let fear control us. Adani leaned into her mother's chest. Ugochi held her for a few seconds, then stood. Stay here when they come, Ugochi said. If you want water, tell me quietly. Don't come outside. Adani nodded. At exactly 12:10 p.m., the bell rang. Ugochi's stomach tightened. She walked to the door and opened it. 2 women stood outside, smelling of perfume and wearing bright clothes. One had a short haircut. The other had long braids. Behind them was a man in glasses holding a small gift bag. Hello, the first woman said, looking Ugochi up and down like she was checking her price. Good afternoon, ma, Ugochi replied. Please come in. The visitors entered and sat in the sitting room. Ugochi offered them water. Thank you, the man said politely. The second woman waved her hand. No, don't bring water yet. Where is Elizabeth? She's not around. She will be here soon, ma, Ugochi said. The first woman leaned back on the sofa and looked around. This house is always neat. Elizabeth knows how to keep standard. Ugochi smiled small and said nothing. The second woman laughed.
Of course, if you have help, everything must be perfect. That's why I tell people, if you don't have help, don't pretend. Ugochi stood there holding the tray, feeling her face warm. She placed the tray down and stepped back. A few minutes later, Elizabeth came in with a big smile, like she was a different person. "My people," Elizabeth said loudly, "welcome." They greeted each other with hugging and laughter. Elizabeth sat among them like a queen in her palace. Her voice became sweet. Her face became soft. It was the same mouth, but a different person. Ugochi stood close, ready to serve. "Ugochi," Elizabeth called, smiling, "bring snacks." "Yes, ma." Ugochi went to the kitchen and brought snacks and drinks. She arranged them neatly on the table. Elizabeth watched her. Then she clicked her tongue. "What is this?" Elizabeth asked, still smiling at her friend. Ugochi froze. "Ma?" Elizabeth pointed at the tray. "You put the glass too close to the plate. Do you want my guest to struggle?" Ugochi quickly moved it. "Sorry, ma." Elizabeth shook her head and laughed softly like it was a joke. "You see why I have to be strict?" Elizabeth said to her friends. "If you don't control people, they will climb your head." Her friends laughed. Ugochi's chest tightened. The man in glasses looked uncomfortable. He cleared his throat and took a drink. The first woman smiled. "Elizabeth, you are right. Staff need strong hand." Elizabeth nodded, like she had just taught a big lesson. Ugochi stood there, feeling small. Elizabeth turned to her again, still smiling. "And wipe that table again. I can see dust." Ugochi glanced at the table. There was no dust, but she nodded. "Yes, ma." She went to get a cloth and wiped the table slowly. Her face calm, but her eyes burning inside. She could feel their eyes on her, like she was a show. "Some people are lucky," the second woman said, sipping her drink. "Imagine living in this kind of house." Elizabeth laughed. "Lucky or hardworking? Anyway, Ugochi, hurry up." "Yes, ma." Ugochi finished and stepped back. Elizabeth's friend asked, "So, Elizabeth, did you finally settle your driver issue?" Elizabeth rolled her eyes. "Don't remind me. People these days don't know loyalty. Everyone wants to chop your money and go." Her friends nodded and shared their own complaints. Ugochi stood quietly, waiting for the next order. After some time, Elizabeth waved her hand. "Ugochi, go and bring the cake I kept in the fridge." Ugochi went to the kitchen, opened the fridge and brought out the cake box. She carried it carefully and placed it on the table. As she tried to open it, her hand slipped slightly because the box was cold. The knife hit the plate and made a small sound. Not loud, just a small clink. But Elizabeth's eyes turned sharp immediately. "Are you okay?" Elizabeth asked, voice still sweet, but with danger inside it. "Yes, ma. Sorry, ma," Ugochi said quickly. Elizabeth turned to her friends and laughed again. "You see, if I don't watch them, they will break everything." The women laughed. Ugochi wanted to disappear. She cut the cake and served them. Her hands were steady now, but her heart was heavy. When she finished serving, she stepped back and waited. The man in glasses glanced at Ugochi and then at Elizabeth. He looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. After about an hour, the visitors stood up to leave. Elizabeth walked them to the door with smiles, hugs, and promises to see them again. When the gates closed and the sound of their car faded, the house became silent again. Elizabeth's smile dropped like something heavy. She turned and walked back inside, her heels making sharp sounds on the floor. Ugochi started to clear the table quickly. Elizabeth stopped in front of her. "You embarrassed me," Elizabeth said. Ugochi looked up, confused. "Ma?" Elizabeth leaned closer. "That cake moment, you almost messed up in front of my friends." Ugochi's mouth opened slightly. "Ma, I didn't." Elizabeth raised her hand again. "Don't talk, just listen." Ugochi closed her mouth. Elizabeth's eyes moved toward the back hallway, like she was remembering something. "And your child, make sure she doesn't come out. I don't want small girl running around my house." "Yes, ma," Ugochi said. Elizabeth stared at her. "Sometimes I wonder if you people understand simple instruction." Ugochi held her tray tighter. "I understand, ma." Elizabeth's lips curled. "If you understand, then act like it." Then she walked away to her room upstairs, leaving Ugochi standing there with shame sitting on her shoulders. Ugochi breathed in slowly. She cleared the table, she washed the dishes, she mopped the floor again, she arranged the sitting room back, she took the trash out. By the time she finished, the sky was starting turning orange. Evening came quietly. Elizabeth came down later and ate dinner, barely speaking. She watched TV and scrolled on her phone, giving orders without looking up. Bring water, turn off that light, close the curtain. Ugochi did everything. When it was finally night and Elizabeth's room light went off, Ugochi returned to her small room at the back. Adani was waiting. She sat on the bed with a small torchlight and her notebook open. The room was warm compared to the big house, not because of anything special, but because this was where love lived. "Mommy," Adani said as soon as Ugochi entered. "You're back." Ugochi dropped onto the chair, tired. "I'm back." Adani stood and walked to her mother, touching her arm. "Are you okay?" Ugochi wanted to say yes quickly. She wanted to protect her child from the truth, but she also wanted to teach her child how to live. So she pulled Adani onto her lap. "I'm tired," Ugochi admitted, "but I'm okay." Adani's eyes searched her face. "Did Madame shout?" Ugochi paused. "Not like before, but she talked in a way that hurt." Adani frowned. "Why does she hurt you?" Ugochi looked at her daughter's face. In the torchlight, her eyes looked big and serious. "She thinks being harsh will make people respect her," Ugochi said. "Some people believe that if they don't press others down, others will climb on them." Adani remembered and tried to copy the voice she had heard sometimes, like when she says, "If you don't control people, they will climb your head." Ugochi's lips pressed together. She nodded. Yes, that's what she believes. Adani's voice became small. "Is it true?" Ugochi held her daughter's face gently. "No, my child, it's not true. Respect is not something you force with fear. Respect grows when you treat people well." Adani leaned into her mother. "But why is she happy with her friends and mean to you?" Ugochi sighed. "Because some people show their best face outside and show their real face inside." Adani was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at her notebook. "Mommy, you said we will read today." Ugochi smiled a little. "Yes, we will." She shifted Adani on her lap, opened the notebook and pointed at the first line. The handwriting was not perfect, but it was clear. "Okay," Ugochi said. "Today we will read these words. Are you ready?" Adani nodded. "Yes." Ugochi pointed. A, Adani said. B, C, C. Ugochi smiled, warmth spreading slowly in her chest. This small moment felt like water in a dry place. They continued. Sometimes Adani made mistakes and Ugochi corrected her gently. "No, not that one. Try again," Ugochi said. Adani tried again, slower. "Yes," Ugochi said proudly. "Good." After reading, Adani looked up. "Mommy, when I grow up, I will not shout at people." Ugochi kissed her forehead. "That's good." Adani's face became serious again. "But Mommy, what if people are wicked to me? What should I do?" Ugochi's eyes softened. This was the real lesson. Not just letters, but life. She held Adani's small hands in hers. "Listen to me," Ugochi said in a soft voice. The same soft voice she used when pain tried to harden her. "Never repay evil with evil. Let your success speak for you." Adani repeated slowly, like she was tasting the words. "Never repay evil with evil." Ugochi nodded. "Yes." Adani added, "Let your success speak for you." Ugochi smiled. "That's it." Adani looked puzzled. But how will success speak? Ugochi thought for a moment, then explained in simple words. When you keep doing good, when you learn, when you work, when you grow, people will see it, Ugochi said. You don't need to fight everyone with your mouth. Your life will answer them. Adani looked down, thinking, "So, I should not be wicked back?" Ugochi shook her head. "No. If someone hurts you, protect yourself. Speak up when you need to, but don't become like them." Adani's eyes became wet. "Mommy, I don't like this house. Ugochi pulled her close again. I know. Adani whispered, this house is big, but it's not warm. Ugochi's throat tightened because her child had spoken truth in a child's way. Yes, Ugochi said softly, that's why we make our own warmth here. She pointed at the notebook. This is our warmth. Kindness is our warmth. God is our warmth. Adani wiped her eyes. Will we leave one day? Ugochi looked around their small room. The wall had small cracks, the bed was not soft, the torchlight was weak, but here her child could breathe. Yes, Ugochi said, not as a promise she was sure of, but a hope she refused to drop. We will leave one day. Adani leaned her head on Ugochi's shoulder. Okay. Ugochi held her and rocked her gently like she used to when Adani was smaller. Outside their door, the mansion was silent and cold with expensive furniture and shining floors. Inside the small back room, a mother and child sat close, sharing letters, sharing truth, and sharing the kind of love that did not need a big house to grow. Before sleeping, Adani yawned. Mommy, read it again. Ugochi smiled. Which one? The lesson. Ugochi stroked her hair. Okay. She spoke it again, slow and clear, like a prayer. Never repay evil with evil. Let your success speak for you. Adani's eyes closed slowly. Ugochi watched her breathe, then turned off the torchlight. In the dark, Ugochi lay down and stared into nothing. Her body hurt, her heart hurt too, but she reminded herself of the lesson she just taught her child. She could not control Elizabeth, she could not change her overnight, but she could control what lived inside her own heart. And inside that small room, in a house without warmth, Ugochi held on to the little warmth she could make, one letter, one kind word, one quiet decision at a time.
Morning in Lagos did not wait for anyone. Before the sun fully rose, the sound of buses, horns, and people shouting already filled the air. Traders called out their goods. Conductors hung from bus doors and shouted, Oshodi, CMS, Yaba. Motorcycles rushed past like they were in a race. The city was loud, busy, and always moving. In the small room behind Elizabeth's mansion, Ugochi woke up again before the alarm. For a moment, she lay still and listened. She could hear the faint sound of traffic from the main road. She could hear someone's radio playing far away. She could hear her daughter breathing softly beside her. She turned and looked at Adani. Adani's school uniform was neatly folded on the wooden box. Her sandals were placed under the bed. Her school bag leaned against the wall. School fees were due next week. The thought sat heavy in Ugochi's chest. She got up quietly and began her day. The kitchen work started early as usual. Tea, bread, eggs, cleaning, arranging, washing. Elizabeth came down around 6:30 a.m., dressed for work, holding her phone. Good morning, ma, Ugochi said. Elizabeth gave a small nod and checked the dining table. Did you iron my blue dress? She asked. Yes, ma, it's in your room. Elizabeth walked to the table and picked up her phone again. By the way, she said without looking at Ugochi, last week you broke one of my wine glasses. Ugochi froze. Ma, it slipped from my hand while washing. I said sorry that day. Elizabeth shrugged. Sorry doesn't replace it. Ugochi swallowed. Yes, ma. I've removed the money from your salary, Elizabeth said simply, and also for the light you forgot to turn off in the storeroom. Ugochi's heart jumped. Ma, I turned it off. Elizabeth looked up sharply. Are you calling me a liar? No, ma. I'm sorry, ma. Elizabeth picked up her bag. Be careful next time. If I don't correct you, you won't learn. She walked out. Ugochi stood alone in the kitchen. She tried to calculate in her head. If Elizabeth deducted money for the glass and the light, what would remain? Would it still be enough for school fees, for transport, for food? She closed her eyes for a second. God, help me, she whispered. Later that morning, after finishing the house chores, Ugochi walked Adani to the small gate that led to the main road.
Go straight to school, she said gently. Don't follow anyone. Yes, Mommy. Adani adjusted her bag on her shoulder.
Her school was not far, but they still needed bus money sometimes when it rained. Today she would walk. As Adani walked down the busy street, she watched the city around her. Women carrying baskets on their heads, men pushing carts filled with fruits, children in uniforms rushing like her. She felt small in the middle of the noise. At school, the classroom was crowded. The walls were painted light green, but the paint was peeling in some corners. The wooden desks were old. Some had names carved on them. Adani sat in the second row. Her friend Mary leaned close. Did you hear? Mary whispered. There is a scholarship test coming. Adani turned quickly. Scholarship? Mary nodded. Yes, for best students. If you pass, you won't pay fees again. Adani's heart beat fast. No fees. She thought about her mother's tired face. She thought about the small room. She thought about the way Elizabeth talked about deductions. No fees? She repeated softly. Mary nodded. Teacher Grace said only top students can write it. Just then, Grace entered the classroom. Grace was in her early 30s. She wore simple clothes and flat shoes. Her hair was tied back. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. She noticed everything. Good morning, class, Grace said. Good morning, teacher, the children answered. Grace wrote on the board with white chalk. Listen carefully, she said. There is a scholarship exam next month. It is for students who are serious and hardworking. The classroom became quiet. If you pass, Grace continued, your school fees will be paid until you finish primary school. A small murmur filled the room. Grace raised her hand. But it will not be easy. Only those who prepare well will pass. Her eyes moved around the class and stopped on Adani. Adani, she said, stand up. Adani stood slowly. You always do well in class, Grace said. Are you ready to work harder? Adani nodded. Yes, teacher. Grace smiled slightly. Good. I will give extra lessons after school for those who want to try. Adani's heart felt like it was jumping inside her chest. After school, she waited outside while Grace gathered a small group of students. Scholarship exam is not about luck. It is about practice. You must read every day. You must understand, not just cram. Adani listened like someone listening to life instructions. Grace handed out small papers with sample questions. Take this home. Solve it. Tomorrow we will discuss. When school closed fully, Adani walked home fast, her mind full. She entered the compound quietly and went to the back room. Mommy, she called softly. Ugochi looked up from washing clothes. You're back. Mommy, there is scholarship exam. Ugochi wiped her hands. Scholarship? Adani nodded quickly. If I pass, no more school fees. Ugochi's hand stopped moving. No more fees, she repeated slowly. Yes, Teacher Grace said only top students can write it. She said I can try. Ugochi's face shone. Mommy, I will read every day. Ugochi smiled, but her eyes looked worried too. That is good, but reading needs light. It needs time. Adani looked confused. We have light? Ugochi did not say that sometimes they had to switch off lights early to avoid Elizabeth's anger. She did not say that kerosene was not always enough. We will manage, Ugochi said instead. That night, after finishing her work, Ugochi served Elizabeth dinner. Elizabeth was in a bad mood. My meeting was useless, she complained. People are not serious. Ugochi stood quietly. And the client delayed payment, Elizabeth continued. When money is not flowing, everyone will suffer. She looked at Ugochi. Salary will delay this month, Elizabeth said plainly. Until next week. Ugochi felt her legs go weak. Ma, school fees, she began carefully. Elizabeth frowned. Am I your school sponsor? No, ma. Then wait, Elizabeth said sharply. or go and find another job if you don't like it. Ugochi bowed her head. Yes, ma. She walked back to her room slowly. Adani was sitting on the bed with her book open. Mommy, Adani asked. Ugochi forced a smile. How was reading? Adani looked excited. I solved 5 questions. Ugochi sat beside her. For a moment, she wanted to cry, but she swallowed it. Very good, she said softly. Later that night, when Adani slept, Ugochi counted the little money in her small purse. It was not enough. The next morning, she made a decision. After finishing her work in Elizabeth's house, she began to look for extra small jobs nearby. She washed clothes for a neighbor named Tom. She cleaned the compound of an old woman named Rose on Sundays. She even skipped lunch some days, telling Adani she was not hungry. Adani noticed. Mommy, why are you not eating? She asked one evening. I ate earlier, Ugochi lied gently, but her stomach hurt at night. Meanwhile, at school, Grace kept pushing the students. Adani, she said one afternoon, your answers are good, but you rush. Slow down. Yes, teacher. Grace looked at her closely. Are you okay at home? Adani hesitated. She thought of Elizabeth's sharp voice. She thought of salary delay. She thought of her mother washing clothes late at night. Yes, teacher, she said softly. Grace did not fully believe her, but she nodded. As days passed, Lagos remained loud. Buses shouted, markets screamed with life. Rain fell heavily some evenings, flooding small roads. Power supply came and went. Inside the small room, Adani read by torchlight when there was no electricity. One night, as she solved math questions, she suddenly threw her pencil down. I hate her, she said. Ugochi looked up from mending a torn dress. Who? Madam Elizabeth. Adani's eyes were hot. She delays your salary. She talks to you like you are nothing. Because of her, you don't eat well. Ugochi's heart tightened. Adani, she said slowly. Adani stood up. Madam Elizabeth will suffer one day. The words came out strong and angry. Silence filled the room. Ugochi stood up and walked to her daughter. Don't talk like that, she said quietly. But mommy... Ugochi held her shoulders gently but firmly. Don't talk like that. Adani's chest was rising fast. Why? She is wicked. Ugochi looked into Adani's eyes. Hate will burn you first before it reaches anyone else, she said softly. Adani blinked. Ugochi continued. If you carry bitterness in your heart, it will make you heavy. It will disturb your mind. It will steal your peace. Adani's anger began to turn into tears. But she hurts you, she whispered. It is not fair. I know, Ugochi said, but we will not let her change who we are. Adani's lips trembled. It's not fair. No, Ugochi agreed. It's not. Life is not always fair. She pulled Adani into her arms. You focus on your test, Ugochi said gently. That is how you answer, not with hate, with success. Adani sniffed. What if I fail? Then we try again, but we will not fail because of anger. The next weeks were full of tension. Elizabeth deducted more money for small reasons. You scratched the pot, she said one day. You used too much detergent, she said another. Ugochi kept quiet, swallowing words. She continued to take extra jobs. Her body grew thinner. Her cheeks lost some fullness. Grace noticed something different in Adani too. You look tired, Grace said one afternoon. I'm fine, Adani replied. Grace sighed. Remember, scholarship is not just for smart children, it is for strong children too. The day of the scholarship test finally arrived. The school hall was arranged with desks in straight lines. The air was hot. Fans turned slowly on the ceiling. Adani sat down,
her pencil shaking slightly in her hand. She thought of her mother's tired smile. She thought of Elizabeth's sharp voice. She thought of Grace's calm eyes. She closed her eyes briefly. Never repay evil with evil, she whispered to herself. Let your success speak. Then the papers were shared. Begin, the supervisor said. The room filled with the sound of pencils scratching paper. Outside, Lagos continued to shout and move. Buses honked, traders argued. Life did not stop for one small girl writing an exam. But inside that hall, Adani wrote like her future depended on it. Because it did. Back in the mansion, Ugochi was mopping the floor when Elizabeth's phone rang loudly. Elizabeth answered and began to complain about money again. Ugochi continued mopping quietly. But inside her heart, she was praying. God, she whispered in her mind, let my child's effort not be wasted. The day felt long. When Adani finally returned home, her face was serious. How was it? Ugochi asked immediately. Adani took a deep breath. I tried my best. Ugochi smiled softly. That is enough. They did not know the result yet, but in that small room, with Lagos noise in the background and salary delay still hanging over them, something had already changed. Adani no longer just dreamed. She had fought. And Ugochi, though tired and hungry, stood firm. The scholarship test was not just an exam. It was their quiet rebellion against a life that tried to press them down. And they were not done yet. The news came on a Wednesday afternoon. Elizabeth stood at the center of the sitting room, speaking loudly on her phone. Her voice carried through the house. Yes, Saturday will be fine, she said. I want it big this time, not like the small one before. She paused and laughed. No, everything will be perfect. You know me. Ugochi was in the dining area polishing the glass table. She listened without looking up. When Elizabeth ended the call, she turned sharply. Ugochi. Yes, ma. We are hosting a dinner this Saturday. Important people are coming, not those idle ones from last time. Yes, ma. I don't want any mistake, Elizabeth said, walking closer. If you embarrass me, you will not like it. Ugochi nodded. Yes, ma. Elizabeth crossed her arms. Start deep cleaning tomorrow. Curtains, carpets, everything. Yes, ma. And make sure your child stays far away. I don't want her face around. Ugochi's throat felt tight, but she answered, yes, ma. That evening, when she returned to the small room, Adani was doing her homework. Mommy, you look tired, Adani said. There is a big gathering on Saturday, Ugochi replied quietly. More work. Adani's face changed. She did not like gatherings. She did not like the way people laughed loudly in the front while her mother moved quietly at the back. Will they shout again? Adani asked. Ugochi forced a small smile. We will just do our work. But inside her heart, she felt uneasy. The days before Saturday were full of work. Ugochi washed heavy curtains and scrubbed the tiles until her fingers hurt. She cleaned the windows inside and outside. She polished silver spoons and plates. Elizabeth walked around with her phone, giving instructions. Move that chair. Dust that corner again. Why is this not shining? Ben, the driver, helped move some furniture. He was a quiet man in his early 40s. He rarely spoke unless spoken to. Sorry, Ben whispered once as he carried a heavy table with Ugochi. Madame wants to impress these people too much. Ugochi gave a small nod. It's okay. Ben shook his head slowly. He had worked in the house for 2 years. He had seen many gatherings. He knew how they ended. On Saturday afternoon, the house looked like a hotel. The dining table was covered with white cloth. Plates were arranged in straight lines. The air smelt of perfume and food. Elizabeth wore a long red dress. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was bold. She looked at herself in the mirror and smiled. This is how it should be, she said to no one. Ugochi wore a simple, clean gown and tied her scarf neatly. Adani stayed in the small room, sitting quietly with her book. Before the guests arrived, Ugochi bent down to her daughter. Stay inside, she said softly, no matter what you hear. Adani nodded. But mommy, no matter what, Ugochi repeated gently. The bell rang at 6:30 p.m. Cars filled the compound. Laughter entered before the people did. Linda was the first to step inside. She was tall and loud with heavy makeup and shiny jewelry. Elizabeth, Linda shouted happily. You look beautiful. They hugged and laughed. More guests followed. A man named John, a woman named Rose, another couple, and Mary. Mary came quietly. She wore a simple blue dress and soft shoes. She greeted Elizabeth politely. Ben stood near the door, guiding guests to park. The sitting room soon filled with voices. Ugochi moved from kitchen to dining area, carrying trays of drinks and small plates. Linda took a glass and looked at Ugochi's face. Is this your house girl? Linda asked loudly. Elizabeth laughed lightly. Yes. Linda looked Ugochi up and down. She looks serious. Do you smile at all? Some guests laughed. Ugochi kept her face calm. Welcome, ma. Linda waved her hand. These workers, if you don't show them who is boss, they will think they are family. Elizabeth laughed again. Exactly. Mary stood a little behind, watching. Her face did not carry laughter. John joined in. My own cook last month tried to tell me how to arrange my kitchen. Imagine. More laughter. Ugochi felt heat in her ears. She wanted to disappear into the kitchen wall. Elizabeth turned to her. Stand properly, she said in a sharp voice. Don't bend like that. Yes, ma. Linda shook her head. You see, they need training. Elizabeth smiled proudly. In this house, everyone knows their level. Mary's eyes moved from Elizabeth to Ugochi. Dinner was served. Ugochi carried plates carefully, one by one. As she served Linda, her hand shook slightly from tiredness. A small drop of stew fell near the edge of the plate. Linda pulled her plate back quickly. Ah, look at that, she said loudly. The room became quiet. Elizabeth stood up immediately. What happened? She demanded. Your girl almost poured stew on me, Linda said dramatically. Ugochi spoke quickly. Sorry, ma, it did not touch her dress. Elizabeth's face changed. In front of my guests, she asked coldly. Ma, it was small. Before she could finish, Elizabeth raised her voice. You are careless, she shouted. How many times have I told you to be careful? The room was silent. Ugochi stood frozen. Elizabeth continued, louder now. Do you know how much this dinner costs and you want to spoil it? Linda shook her head slowly. These people. John laughed softly. Ben, standing near the wall, looked down at the floor. Mary stepped closer to Rose and whispered softly. This house is rich, but it is not a home. Rose looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Elizabeth turned to the guests again and forced a laugh. Sorry about that. Sometimes they forget themselves. The word hit Ugochi's chest. Forget themselves. As if she was not human. Elizabeth looked at Ugochi sharply. Go inside. Don't show your face here again tonight. Yes, ma, Ugochi said quietly. She walked toward the kitchen, her steps steady but heavy. Inside, her hands began to shake. She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. She could still hear laughter outside. She finished arranging food quietly and stayed hidden in the kitchen until most guests left. When the dinner ended and cars began to leave, the house slowly returned to silence. Elizabeth walked into the kitchen. Next time, I will deduct your salary again, she said calmly, like nothing happened. You embarrassed me. Ugochi looked down. Sorry, ma. Elizabeth waved her hand and walked away. Ben waited until Elizabeth was gone before speaking. Sorry, he said softly. Ugochi shook her head. It's okay. But it was not okay. That night, when everything was quiet, Ugochi returned to the small room. Adani was awake. She had heard everything. She had heard the loud voice, the laughter, the sharp words.
When Ugochi entered, Adani looked at her face carefully. "Mommy," she asked softly. Ugochi tried to smile. "You are still awake?" Adani nodded. They sat on the bed together. For a moment, Ugochi stayed silent. Then something broke inside her. Tears filled her eyes. She turned her face away quickly, but it was too late. Adani saw. "Mommy," Adani whispered. Ugochi covered her mouth with her hand, trying to stop the sound. She was not crying loudly, no. She was crying quietly, like someone who did not want to disturb anyone. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not because she was weak, but because she was human. Because being talked to like nothing hurts. Because being laughed at in front of others hurts. Because carrying pain every day is heavy. Adani moved closer and held her mother tightly. "Don't cry," she whispered, her own eyes wet. Ugochi wiped her tears quickly. "I'm okay," she said softly. But Adani shook her head. "You are not okay." Ugochi looked at her daughter. For the first time, she did not pretend. "It hurts," she admitted quietly. Adani's hands tightened around her mother's dress. "I hate this house," she said in a low voice. Ugochi took a deep breath. Then she spoke, her voice steady now. "My child will not live this life." Adani looked up at her. Ugochi held her face gently. "You will study," she said softly. "You will work hard. You will not beg anyone for respect." Adani nodded slowly. In her heart, she made a promise. She did not say it out loud, but she promised herself that one day she would leave this life behind. She would not allow anyone to talk to her mother like that again. She would escape. After a few minutes, Ugochi wiped her face completely. "Bring your book," she said gently. Adani looked surprised. "Now?" "Yes, we will read." Even with red eyes, even with a heavy heart, they opened the notebook. The small torchlight lit the page. Outside, the mansion stood big and silent. Inside the small room, a mother and child sat close. Ugochi pointed at a word. "Read this," she said softly. Adani read. Her voice was stronger than before. The house was rich. But in that small back room, something stronger was growing. Hope. The morning it happened started like every other morning. Lagos was already awake. Even before the sun fully rose, the city was shouting. A bus horn sounded far away. A generator somewhere nearby coughed and began to run. Someone on the street yelled, "Pure water!" and another voice answered with an angry reply. In the small back room behind Elizabeth's mansion, Ugochi woke up and sat up quietly. She looked at Adani sleeping beside her. The girl's face was calm, but her lips were dry. Ugochi knew Adani had been reading late again the night before. Ugochi touched her daughter's forehead softly, then stood up. She moved like a shadow, careful not to make noise. She washed her face in the basin, tied her scarf, and stepped into the kitchen. The house was quiet, but Ugochi knew it would not remain quiet for long. It never did. She set water on the gas, wiped the counter, and brought out bread and tea. As she walked, her mind kept going back to the last gathering. The shame, the laughter, the way Elizabeth's voice had cut through the room. Ugochi pushed the memory aside and focused on what she could control. Just do your work. Keep your peace. Keep your child learning. At 6:30 a.m., Elizabeth came down in a hurry. Her phone was in her hand. Her face looked like someone who had not slept well. "Good morning, Ma," Ugochi said. Elizabeth did not answer. She went straight to the dining table and sat down. "Where is my tea?" she asked sharply. Ugochi placed it down carefully. "It's here, Ma." Elizabeth took one sip and frowned.
It's not hot. Ugochi looked at the cup. It was steaming. It's hot, Ma, she said softly. Elizabeth's eyes lifted slowly. Are you arguing with me now? No, Ma. Sorry, Ma. Ugochi pushed the cup away like it was poison. Warm it and bring my phone charger from upstairs and clean the guest bathroom again. I smell something. Yes, Ma, Ugochi replied, already moving. She warmed the tea and rushed upstairs for the charger. She came back down quickly and moved to the guest bathroom. It was already clean. She had cleaned it late last night, but she cleaned it again anyway, scrubbing the sink and wiping the mirror until her hands hurt. When she finished, she stepped out and heard Elizabeth's voice again. Ugochi. Yes, Ma. Elizabeth stood at the foot of the stairs, her bag on her shoulder. I'm going out, Elizabeth said. Make sure you finish the laundry and don't forget my white blouse. I need it by evening. Yes, Ma. Elizabeth paused, her eyes narrow. And don't let that your child enter the living room. I saw her slippers near the hallway yesterday. Ugochi's heart jumped. Ma, she didn't enter. Maybe the slippers... Elizabeth raised her hand. I don't want to hear it. Yes, Ma. Elizabeth walked out and the gate closed behind her. The house became quiet again, but the quiet did not mean peace. It only meant waiting. Ugochi went to check on Adani before leaving to wash clothes outside. Adani was already awake, sitting on the bed, brushing her teeth with a small toothbrush. Mommy, Adani said softly, are you going to school meeting today? Ugochi sighed. Not today. We don't have time. Adani nodded and looked down. Ugochi sat beside her and adjusted the collar of her uniform. You will go to school. Do your best. Listen to Teacher Grace. Adani's eyes lifted. Mommy, are we okay? Ugochi forced a smile. We are okay. But her voice sounded thin, even to her. Adani hugged her quickly, then stood up. I will read today, she promised. Ugochi kissed her forehead. Yes, keep learning. She walked Adani out to the gate and watched her go. Then she returned to the laundry. By midday, the sun was hot. Ugochi carried heavy wet clothes, hung them on the line, and ran back and forth with a bucket. She was tired, but she kept moving. When the clothes were almost done, a small incident happened. It was small, truly. Small. The kind of thing that could happen to anyone. Ugochi was ironing Elizabeth's white blouse. The iron was hot. She was careful. She was always careful. But as she lifted the iron, a small drop of water from the pressing bottle fell on the fabric. The iron touched that spot for a second too long. A tiny brown mark appeared. Ugochi froze. Her heart fell into her stomach. She quickly unplugged the iron and brought the blouse closer to the light. The mark was not big, but it was there. A small stain, like a bruise. Ugochi's hands began to shake. She ran to the kitchen and tried to wipe it gently with a damp cloth. She tried soap. She tried to rub it softly. It did not go. It only spread slightly. She stood there breathing hard. God, please, she whispered. Then she heard the gate. Elizabeth had returned earlier than expected. Ugochi's stomach tightened. She quickly folded the blouse and placed it aside, hoping she could find a way before evening. But Elizabeth was already inside, heels clicking on the tiles, voice loud on the phone. Yes, I'm home. I will send the file now, Elizabeth said. These people are annoying. She ended the call and looked around. Ugochi, she shouted. Ugochi stepped out of the kitchen. Yes, ma. Elizabeth dropped her bag on the sofa. Where is my white blouse? Ugochi swallowed. Ma, I ironed it, but... Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. But what? Ugochi picked the blouse with careful hands and brought it forward. Elizabeth snatched it from her and held it up. Then she saw the mark. What is this? Elizabeth asked, voice low and dangerous. Ugochi's throat felt dry. Ma, it was a small... Elizabeth's voice rose suddenly. You burnt my blouse. Ugochi's eyes widened. Ma, it's small. I can... You will do what? Elizabeth shouted. You will buy a new one? Ugochi shook her head quickly. Ma, I'm sorry. Please let me find a way. Elizabeth threw the blouse on the sofa like it was rubbish. You are useless, she screamed. Completely useless. Ugochi stood still, her body stiff. Elizabeth paced, breathing hard, like she was looking for something to throw. I am tired of you, Elizabeth continued. Every time it's one problem or the other. First you embarrass me in front of my guests, now you are destroying my things. Ma, please, Ugochi said softly. I didn't mean... Shut up, Elizabeth yelled. Ben, the driver, entered from the side door, holding a car key. Madam, Ben said carefully, what happened? Elizabeth turned to him sharply. Stay out of it. Ben stepped back quietly. Elizabeth faced Ugochi again. You know what? Elizabeth said, breathing fast. Pack your things. Ugochi's eyes blinked. Ma? Pack your things, Elizabeth repeated. I don't need you again. You are no longer needed. The words hit Ugochi like a slap.
Ma, please, Ugochi whispered. Where will I go, my child? Elizabeth's face did not move. That is not my business. You and your child leave this compound today. Ugochi felt dizzy. Ma, please, at least give me time. Time for what? Elizabeth asked, mocking her. So you can plan how to spoil another thing. Ugochi's voice shook. Ma, it's evening. Where will we sleep? Elizabeth pointed toward the back. You have until 1 hour, she said coldly. If you are not out, I will call security. Ugochi's mouth opened, but no words came out. Elizabeth looked at Ben. Ben, go and bring black nylon bags. Let her pack and go. Ben's eyes showed pain, but he nodded. Yes, madam. Elizabeth walked upstairs, still angry, leaving Ugochi standing there like someone who had been pushed into deep water. For a few seconds, Ugochi did not move. Then she forced her legs to walk. She ran to the back room. Her hands moved fast, but her mind was slow. She began to pack clothes into small bags. She packed Adani's uniform, books, and sandals. She packed her own wrapper and few tops. She packed the notebook Adani used for reading. Her fingers shook so much she dropped a shot. Ben appeared at the door holding 2 black nylon bags. He placed them down quietly. I'm sorry, he said under his breath. Ugochi swallowed tears. Thank you. Ben hesitated. Do you have where you are going? Ugochi shook her head slowly. Ben looked away like he didn't want her to see his helplessness. I can give you small transport, he said softly. Not much. Ugochi nodded slowly. Anything will help. Ben reached into his pocket and brought out some cash. He handed it to her discreetly. Ugochi held it like it was a fragile thing. God bless you. Ben nodded once and left quickly before Elizabeth came down. Ugochi continued packing. Then she heard a small voice at the door. Mommy! Adani stood there in her uniform, eyes wide. She had come back to school early. Maybe teachers closed early. Maybe rain threatened. She held her bag tightly. Ugochi turned to her and forced calm into her voice. Come inside, she said gently. Adani stepped inside, looking around the room as Ugochi packed. What is happening? Adani asked, voice small. Ugochi paused and looked at her daughter. Her heart broke, but she did not want to break Adani too. Madame said we should leave, Ugochi said simply. Adani's eyes widened more. Leave? Today? Ugochi nodded. Adani's face began to shake. Mommy, will we sleep outside? She asked, fear in her voice. Ugochi held her shoulders firmly. No, she said, firm and clear. No, God will make a way, but you must keep learning. Adani's tears gathered, but she nodded slowly because her mother's voice sounded like a rope. Ugochi finished packing quickly. She held the bags in both hands and Adani held her own school bag. They stepped out of the back room and into the compound. The mansion looked the same, big, clean, quiet, but now it felt like a place throwing them away. As they passed the kitchen door, Elizabeth came down the stairs, dressed again, looking calm like her anger had cooled into pride. She did not look at Adani. Leave the keys, she said to Ugochi. Ugochi placed the small backroom key on the table near the kitchen. Elizabeth glanced at the bags.
Make sure you don't steal anything. Ugochi's mouth tightened, but she said nothing. She only nodded and moved forward. Ben opened the small gate for them. Outside, Lagos noise hit them like a wave. Cars passed, people walked fast, a bus conductor shouted. Someone was frying atara nearby, and the smell of hot oil mixed with dust made Ugochi feel light. Ugochi stood with her bags and looked left and right. For the first time in a long time, she had no sure direction. Adani held her hand tightly. Where are we going? Adani asked quietly. Ugochi looked up at the road. We will find a place, she said. They walked toward the main street, carrying their small bags and their big fear. Ugochi used part of Ben's money to enter a small bus. The conductor shouted at them to hurry. Madam, enter! Move, move! Ugochi squeezed inside with Adani. The bus was hot. People were pressed together. Someone's elbow kept touching Ugochi's side. A woman carried a baby who was crying. Adani leaned into Ugochi's arm. Ugochi whispered, Don't be afraid. But her own heart was shaking. They got down near a busy area with many small streets and shops. Ugochi knew someone there, a woman named Rose who sold food by the roadside. Rose was not Elizabeth's guest. She was an old neighbor Ugochi had once helped wash clothes for. Ugochi found Rose under a small umbrella serving rice to customers. Rose looked up and recognized her. Ugochi? Rose asked surprised. What happened? Ugochi's lips trembled. Rose, I lost my job today. We have nowhere. Rose's face softened. Sorry, my dear, sorry. She looked at Adani and sighed. Come, sit, Rose said, pointing to a bench behind her table. Ugochi sat, her bags by her feet. Adani sat close. Rose served them water. Drink. Ugochi drank slowly. Her throat was dry. Rose asked, She sent you out like that? Ugochi nodded. Rose shook her head. God is watching. Then Rose leaned closer and lowered her voice. There are some cheap rooms around here, Rose said, but you need money. Landlords are not smiling. Ugochi nodded. I have small, not enough. Rose thought, There is one agent, his name is Sam. He knows empty rooms, but he likes money too. Ugochi exhaled. I will try. Rose called someone nearby and asked for Sam's number. After some minutes, Sam arrived. Sam was a short man with a cap. He looked at Ugochi and her bags and understood quickly. You want room? Sam asked. Yes, Ugochi replied. One small room. I will pay, but I don't have plenty. Sam rubbed his chin. Lagos no be beans. How much you get? Ugochi told him the amount she had, including Ben's money and her little savings. Sam laughed small. That money fits only deposit and rent for 1 year or 2 years or agent fee or agreement. Ugochi's heart sank. Please help me. I don't have family here. Sam looked at Adani. Any child? He asked. Yes, Ugochi said. She's in school. Sam scratched his head. Okay, I can show you one place. Not fine, but you can manage. The landlord fees collect month by month if you beg well. Ugochi nodded quickly. Please. They followed Sam through crowded streets. The road was narrow. Shops were packed close. People shouted. Motorcycles passed too close, splashing dirty water from the gutter. A generator roared from one shop, shaking the air. Ugochi covered her ears. Mommy, it's loud, she whispered. I know, Ugochi said softly. They walked deeper into the area until they reached a compound. The gate was rusty. Inside, small rooms surrounded a narrow walkway. Clothes hung on lines, the smell of frying oil mixed with damp walls. Children played with empty plastic bottles. A woman stood by a bucket washing plates. She stared at Ugochi and Adani without greeting. Sam knocked on one door. An old man opened. He was the landlord, Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul looked at Sam. Who is this? Sam smiled. Landlord, this woman needs a room. She's serious. Mr. Paul looked Ugochi up and down. You have money? Ugochi nodded. Yes, sir. Not plenty, but I can pay month by month, please. Mr. Paul frowned. Month by month? Sam quickly added. She is clean. She will not trouble you. Mr. Paul looked at Adana. And this one? My daughter, Ugochi said. Mr. Paul sighed. Okay, come and see the room. He led them to a small door. Inside was a tiny room. The floor was cement. The walls were rough. There was a small window with broken net. The roof looked old, but it was not leaking, Mr. Paul claimed. There was no bathroom inside. The toilet and bathroom were outside, shared by everyone. Adani looked around silently. Ugochi tried not to show fear. She forced herself to speak calmly. "Sir, how much?" Mr. Paul said the price. It was high for such a small room, but it was Lagos. Ugochi swallowed. "Please, I can pay deposit and rent for 1 month now. Next month I will pay again." Mr. Paul frowned again. People don't pay, they run." Ugochi raised her hand slightly. "Sir, I will not run. I just lost my job today. I am looking for another. Please, have mercy." Sam leaned closer to Mr. Paul and whispered something. Mr. Paul looked at Ugochi again, then at Adani. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, pay what you have now, but if you fail next month, you will leave." Ugochi exhaled like someone coming out from underwater. "Thank you, sir," she said quickly. They paid. Sam collected his small agent fee too, even though Ugochi begged. He reduced it a little, but not much. When they finished, Ugochi's morning money was very small, but they had a roof. That evening, Ugochi and Adani moved into the tiny room with their small bags. They had no bed, only a thin bat Rose helped them borrow from a neighbor. Rose also gave them a small pot of rice and stew, saying, "Eat first, you will think later." As night came, the compound became noisy. Someone's generator started again, vibrating the air. A couple argued loudly in the next room. A baby cried. Someone played music on a phone, loud and rough. Adani sat on the mat, her knees to her chest. "Mommy," she whispered, "are we safe here?" Ugochi sat beside her and held her hand. "We are safe," she said gently. "We are together." Adani looked down. "I miss our small room in the big house." Ugochi nodded slowly. "I know." Adani's eyes filled. "Madam Elizabeth just sent us away." Ugochi's chest tightened, but she breathed out slowly. "Listen to me. We will not die. We will not sleep outside. God will make a way." Adani wiped her face. "But I'm scared." Ugochi pulled her close. "It's okay to be scared, but you must still do what is right. You must still learn." Adani sniffed. "Even now?" "Yes," Ugochi said firmly. "Especially now." Ugochi stood up and brought out Adani's notebook from the bag, the same notebook that had been their small light in Elizabeth's cold house. She sat back down and placed it on Adani's lap. "Open," Ugochi said. Adani hesitated. "Mommy, I can't hear myself. The noise." Ugochi looked around. The room was tiny, the walls were thin, the noise came from everywhere. Ugochi took a deep breath and made a decision again. She moved closer to Adani, almost pressing their shoulders together. "Read in my ear," she said softly. "Don't read for the whole world. Read for you." Adani opened the book slowly. She pointed at a word and read. Ugochi nodded. "Good." Adani read another line. Outside, generator sign continued like thunder. Someone shouted in the compound. A door slammed. But inside that tiny room, something steady continued. A mother's voice. A child's effort. After reading, Adani looked at her mother. "Mommy," she said, voice small, "will you find another job?" Ugochi nodded. "Yes." "Will we eat tomorrow?" Ugochi paused. She did not want to lie, but she also did not want to throw fear into her child's heart. She said, "We will try carefully. We will do our best, and God will help." Adani leaned into her mother. Ugochi held her daughter and looked at the rough wall in front of them. She thought of Elizabeth's mansion, big and bright. She thought of the way Elizabeth said, "You are no longer needed," like she was talking about a broken spoon. Ugochi's eyes became wet, but she did not cry. Not now. She had cried once, yes, in episode 3. But tonight, she turned that pain into something else. A decision.
"My child will not live this life," she whispered in her mind again. She looked down at Adani. "Sleep," Ugochi said softly. Adani lay down on the mat. "Mommy, will school continue?" Ugochi's heart squeezed. Yes, she said firmly, even if she didn't know how. School will continue. Adani's eyes closed slowly. Ugochi stayed awake for a while, listening to the Lagos night. Generator, shouting, laughter, crying, life. It was not a peaceful night, but it was their night, and for the first time in a long time, nobody could walk into their room and shame Ugochi in front of visitors. Nobody could deduct her salary. Nobody could order her like a tool. They had less comfort, yes, but they had something else too. Freedom. Small, hard freedom. And as Ugochi finally lay down beside her child, she spoke quietly into the darkness. God, you brought us here. You will take us forward. Then she closed her eyes. Tomorrow would come with its own noise, but tomorrow would also come with another chance to try again. The new room in the crowded compound did not know silence. Every morning, before the sun rose, generators started coughing. Roosters crowed. Women shouted across the walkway. A radio played loud gospel music from one room. A baby cried from another. Ugochi opened her eyes to noise. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the rough wall, the small window, the thin mat on the floor, the small bag in the corner. Reality returned gently, not with pain this time, but with weight. She turned to look at Adani. Adani was still sleeping, her arm under her head. Her school uniform was folded neatly near the wall. Her shoes were placed side by side. Ugochi sat up slowly. Today, she whispered to herself, we keep moving. She washed her face with water from a small bucket. She tied her scarf and stepped outside to join the queue for the bathroom. Women were already standing there with buckets. One woman, named Kate, looked at her. You're the new one, Kate said. Yes, Ugochi replied. Kate glanced at her bucket. You walking? Yes, I'm looking. Kate shrugged. In this Lagos, if you don't hustle, you will sleep hungry. Ugochi nodded. She knew that already. After washing, she returned to the room and woke Adani. Time to get ready, she said gently. Adani sat up slowly. The first days in the new place had been hard. The noise, the shared toilet, the narrow space. But Adani had not complained much. She watched her mother carefully, like she was learning how to be strong. Mommy, are you going somewhere today? Yes, Ugochi replied. I will go and ask for work. Adani nodded. And you, Ugochi asked, you will go to school and focus. Adani gave a small smile. Yes. They shared a simple breakfast Rose had helped with the day before. Leftover rice warmed in a small pot. It was not much, but it was enough. As they stepped into the busy street, the city swallowed them again. Cars honked, buses shouted destinations, traders argued over prices. The sun was already hot. Ugochi walked Adani to school first. When they reached the gate, Adani paused. Mommy, she said quietly, will I tell Teacher Grace we moved? Ugochi nodded. Tell her. Adani looked up at her mother's face. You are not ashamed? She asked softly. Ugochi took a breath. I am not ashamed of honest life. We did nothing wrong. Adani nodded slowly. Then she entered the school compound. Inside the classroom, students were already talking loudly. Mary waved at Adani. You came. Adani smiled and sat down. Teacher Grace entered shortly after. Good morning, she said. Good morning, teacher, the class replied. Grace's eyes moved around and stopped on Adani. Adani, she said gently, after class, come and see me. Adani walked to her desk. You look tired, she said softly. Adani hesitated, then spoke. We moved out of where we were staying, she said. Grace's face changed slightly. Are you okay? Yes, Adani replied quickly. We have a small room now. Grace nodded slowly. Your mother is strong, Grace said, and you must also be strong. Adani nodded. Grace opened a file on her desk. There are more scholarship forms, she said, for junior secondary school. If you pass your final exam well, you can apply. Adani's heart beat fast. Really? Yes, Grace said. Education is your ladder. Do you understand? Adani nodded. Yes, teacher. Grace handed her a form. Take this home. Let your mother see it. We will fill it together. Adani held the paper like it was something holy. Meanwhile, Ugochi walked from street to street asking for work. She entered a small restaurant and asked the owner, a woman named Janet. Please, do you need someone to wash plates? Ugochi asked politely. Janet looked at her hands. Have you done it before? Yes, Ugochi replied. I worked in a big house. Janet shrugged. Come tomorrow morning. If you are serious, I will try you. Thank you, Ugochi said quickly. She also asked at a laundry shop owned by a man named Peter. I can wash and iron, she said. Peter scratched his head. Payment is small. I will take it, she answered. By evening, Ugochi had found 2 small jobs. Not steady, not big money, but something. When she returned to the room, she was tired but hopeful. Adani ran to her. Mommy, Teacher Grace gave me a form. Ugochi sat down and wiped her face with her scarf. What form? For scholarship, Adani said, eyes shining. Ugochi took the paper carefully and read slowly. Her heart filled with both fear and hope. This is good, she whispered. Adani watched her face closely. Mommy, can I pass? She asked. Ugochi looked at her daughter firmly. Yes, but you must walk. Adani nodded seriously. That night, under the small bulb that flickered when power came, they filled the form together. Ugochi signed with careful hand. As they finished, a loud voice came from outside. 2 boys were arguing near the compound gate. You are poor, one shouted. The word fluted into their small room. Adani looked up. Ugochi saw the look in her daughter's eyes. Listen to me, Ugochi said gently. Poverty is not shame. Laziness is shame. Wickedness is shame. But honest struggle is not shame. Adani nodded slowly. Weeks passed. Ugochi's days were long. In the morning, she washed plates at Janet's restaurant. The smell of soup and oil stayed in her clothes. Her hands became rough from soap. In the afternoon, she went to Peter's laundry shop and ironed clothes until her back ached. Sometimes, she helped Kate fry akara for small money in the evening. She came home tired, but she did not stop. Every night, she sat with Adani and went through books. Read again, she would say. Adani read. Sometimes her eyes closed from sleep, but she opened them again. At school, not everyone was kind. One day during break, a girl named Stella stood near Adani. I heard your mother is working in a restaurant, Stella said loudly. Adani kept quiet. Stella smirked. Before, she was a maid, right? Some girls laughed. Mary looked uncomfortable. Adani felt heat rise in her face, but she did not cry. Stella leaned closer. Your mother is a maid. The words were meant to hurt. Adani lifted her head and looked straight at Stella. Yes, she said calmly, and she is the strongest person I know. The laughter stopped. Stella blinked. What? She asked. Adani's voice stayed steady. She works every day. She does honest work. She is not lazy. She is not wicked. She is strong. Mary's eyes filled with respect. Stella rolled her eyes and walked away, but she did not laugh again. That day, when Adani returned home, she told her mother what happened. Ugochi listened quietly. You were not angry, she asked. I was, Adani admitted, but I remembered what you said. Ugochi smiled softly. What did I say? That honest life is not shame, Adani replied. Ugochi nodded. Good. She pulled her daughter close. You will meet people like that, Ugochi said. Some will try to make you feel small. But you must know who you are. Adani nodded. The scholarship exam day came again. This time, it felt heavier. The room was quiet as students wrote. Adani remembered Stella's voice. She remembered the compound noise. She remembered her mother's tired hands. She wrote carefully. Outside, Lagos moved like always. Buses, shouting, heat. Inside, she fought quietly. Days passed before the results came. Grace stood in front of the class, holding a paper. Listen, she said. The class went silent. These are the names of students who passed the scholarship exam. Adani's heart beat loudly in her ears. Grace began to read names, one by one. Then, Adani, For a second, Adani thought she had imagined it. Mary gasped softly. Grace looked up and smiled. Adani, you passed. The classroom filled with mixed sounds. Clapping, whispers, some jealous looks. Adani's hands trembled. She stood slowly. Come, Grace said gently. Adani walked to the front. You worked hard, Grace said quietly so only she could hear. Be proud. Adani nodded, tears filling her eyes. After school, she ran all the way home. She entered the small compound, pushing through noise and children playing. Mommy! She shouted before even reaching the door. Ugochi stepped out from the room, worry on her face. What happened? I passed, Adani cried. Ugochi froze. What? I passed the scholarship. For a second, Ugochi did not speak. Then she pulled her daughter into her arms tightly. Thank you, God, she whispered. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time they were not tears of shame. They were tears of relief. Adani laughed and cried at the same time. We did it, she said. Ugochi shook her head gently. No, she said softly. You did it. They sat on the mat holding the result paper like treasure. Outside, the compound noise continued as usual. But inside that small room, something had changed. Education was no longer just a dream. It was a door. That night, they did not have much food. Just gari and sugar. But they ate with smiles. Mommy, Adani said softly, one day I will take you out of here. Ugochi smiled and touched her face. You are already taking us out, she said. Adani looked confused. With your mind, Ugochi added. They lay down to sleep on the thin mat. The generator noise started again. Someone argued outside. A dog barked. But inside, there was peace. Shame had tried to follow them from the big house. But dignity had grown stronger, and education had become their escape.